welcome all of you. So we thought learning curve, which has been decreasing over time, is very, very important for us to understand actually how we can shorten the learning curve, which luckily we could shorten in the recent times. So it all started with the concept that T.T. Wright introduced the learning curve in the aviation in 1936, but in medical, it started in the 80s. So one of the surgeon, when it was a public awareness program which was happening in the law, he said high death rate is very, very common when surgeons were on learning curve. That's when everybody has really thought of, and what is this learning curve? Why should we accept any death rates? So in 90s, when MIS came, again, the learning curve was spoken about it, and the recommendation actually came in line with 2001. So I just want to ask, what exactly is in your idea the learning curve? So Dr. Dekha, you can start off, and then I think Bina, Kishore, everybody can take on. What do you mean, in your personal opinion, a learning curve is?
Good morning. Thank you, everybody, for giving me this opportunity to share my little bit of knowledge that I have. I think learning curve, especially when I'm working.
The screen needs to be full screen, please.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Dr. Parul, we still can't hear you. You're not connected through the audio. Dr. Parul, we can't hear you.
Unmuted. Dr. Dekha, you can continue with the first question by the time Badal can join us.
I think according to me, a learning curve is really understanding laparoscopy. First, gathering a team. And secondly, I think most important is knowing the basic things very clearly about your instruments, about your energy sources. I think that is how your learning curve starts initially. When we start operating, we have very longer operating time. But if we start understanding our instruments well, I think, and the equipments, I think that is the very first step of doing a proper laparoscopic surgery. Because in laparoscopy, the instruments are very small. And every instrument has a small curve, has a small dot somewhere, has a small channel somewhere. And it's very important for us to understand why that channel is made, why that curve is there, and why that particular spot is there, so that we can enhance and optimize our knowledge. So I think when we start understanding that, we optimize our performance by understanding the energy source and the instruments. I think that is
how to go about, no, Dr. Dekha. So, but what exactly you think the definition of learning curve should be? What is the beginning point and what is the end point? Dr. Beenal, you have any say on it?
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. So basically for me, a learning curve is that how you progress from a point where you start understanding the basic technology, because laparoscopy is a technologically driven surgery. So besides the understanding of the anatomy, the tissue and all, you have to, train your mind and your hands and your eyes to that technology. Like we have to train ourselves to acquaint to the 2D vision. We have to train our hands so that in spite of not touching the tissue, with the help of instruments, we are able to perceive the tissue texture. So gradually, from a novice to an expert, this is how we can progress, so our finishing. So what for me, rather than time, the quality of your surgery, like the final outcome, your tissue respect and your anatomy. For me, I mean, I feel that, definitely time is important. That initially we used to take 3-4 hours for a TLH, and now it is like a 45 minutes for a simple TLH. For rather than time, I feel, the final outcome which you give to the patient and the satisfaction which you get. And, you have to kind of slowly, you have to have some role model or some comparison, but slowly you can progress. Suddenly you cannot dream of doing like these solvers, but you can slowly progress.
Yes. So learning curve is something which is simple, reproducible, something which everybody can follow. But the method of learning is surgical any learning. So the time taken and the number of procedures on an average surgeon needs to perform a procedure very independently is what, or you can as well tell it about parameters, right? Do we have Dr. Jay Mehta there? No. Dr. Kishore
I'm
Pandit?
right here, madam. Hi.
Yeah, Jay, what are the parameters you think for evaluating the learning curve?
If you ask me, then I think one of the first things which we should look at is anatomy, understanding anatomy. Okay, that is the first thing in evaluating anybody's learning curve.
But when you are assessing, that is how you go about learning. My question here is, how do you know they have achieved it? Parameters on which you judge that learning curve they have achieved. See, one
Knowledge
Dr.
of-
Beenal has already.
Knowledge of instruments is the first thing, and second is
Okay.
knowledge of anatomy. Only two things. Because if you know these two things, then I think most of the surgeries can be performed.
Jay,
Yes,
so please start
but
your
if a person, my point here, Dr. Jay, is if a person has a theoretical knowledge about this and knowledge of equipment, do you think he's good enough? His learning curve is over and he's ready to do a surgery.
Jay, sir,
So
please
what are
start
the
your
parameters on which you judge? Parul?
One may keep a logbook for all these completed surgeries, if in case
Yeah. So
there should be a standardization.
Many students who come with us will have lots of logbooks. Means their learning curve is over?
No, I mean,
See, I think, if
Yes,
I
Dean.
can say,
Yes, who is that?
I am Dr. Sujata Kar.
Hi, Dr. Sujata. I mean, I'm not seeing your face. I'm so sorry.
I know,
That's
even
why
I am not
Dr.
seeing
Sujata,
everybody's face, so even I am a little
Yeah.
confused. Yeah, so let me
No
also
issues.
pitch in and give a little
Yes.
bit of my opinion. So learning
Yeah.
curve is very, very important, like you said, but I would little bit disagree that there is no starting point. Maybe there's a starting point, but there is no end
Stop.
point to
Yes.
a learning
Continuous
curve.
learning.
Now
There's a
somebody
plateau
like
at the, Dr. Sujata, I will just hold you in a second. There is a plateau at the end of the curve. So it is a curve.
Yes.
There is nothing
Yes.
ending. Plateau.
Yes, yes. So there's a plateau, and you can always go on improving upon that plateau
Yes.
as you evolve as a surgeon. Now, see, somebody like me, like I have started my career, and we have never seen a laparoscopic hysterectomy when we did our post graduation.
Right.
I did my post graduation 1992. There was no laparoscopic hysterectomy. So somebody like me who was trained for open surgery has to,
Right.
totally start a new learning process. And I, of
Right.
course, knew the anatomy very well. And learning the instrument is not a problem. So the learning curve.
Your voice.
Voice.
Dr. Sujata, your voice. Hello. 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 I've lost your voice, Dr. Sujata. Can anyone hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I can hear you, madam.
Then only I think Dr. Sujata's voice is gone. Yes. So actually, when we were discussing about how to put the parameters, what we thought, Dr. Jay, Dr. Lekha, Dr. Beenal, and Dr. Sujata, is the parameters when we went through the researching the thing are, one is operating time, like Dr. Beenal said, but blood loss, transfusions, how many you're doing, what are the complications you're achieving, do you have the ability to achieve the completion of surgery, conversions of laparotomy, pathological margins are included, lymph node yields if you are doing cancer, and period of hospitalization after your surgery, and incidence of complication survival. All these are the parameters on which we base whether the learning curve has reached the plateau or not. So I think parameters are different. Now, but what are the factors affecting? Jay, you have going around telling, I want this, all of your insight into this. What are the factors which affect the learning curve?
Training, madam. If you ask me how well you are trained, that is very important, and where you are trained from. I think that is the prima facie thing,
Okay.
because I
Right.
believe it's just my opinion. I believe that when somebody wants to get trained in endoscopic surgery, it should not be a 1 day or a 3 day or a 2 day or a 5 day course. It should be somebody who is shadowing someone, let's say, for a year, or probably for 6 months, 12 months, whatever it is, so that they
first
learn
point-
the intricacies.
Right. Training. Next, you just train and get back to your office, this thing. Then,
Second, if you ask me, am I allowed to speak, or somebody else's chance?
all of you are allowed to
Okay.
speak one after
Okay.
one. So,
Okay. If you ask me,
Jay and then
okay, if you ask me, the second thing is doing something called as your surgical audit. You should watch your surgery again and again, or probably you should ask your boss or your teacher to watch your surgery if they have the time. Because if you review your own surgery, you will automatically do the next case slightly better than what you did your first case, or what you
Right.
did your previous case. I think these two things are important. And finally, one thing which probably gets missed out in the learning curve is how well you've established your surgical team. How good is your anesthetist? How good is your anesthetist? How good is your assistant? How good is your, nurse who is washing, cleaning, doing all these instruments? I think that is important. And lastly, I would say that, see, something which really helps is something called as, number of surgeries which you do. Like, let's say if you do more number of radical hysterectomies, your learning curve in radical hysterectomy will be faster. But if you do less number of cancer ovaries or omentectomies, you might take slightly more time in learning. That is just my personal thing. Okay, I just think that if you have a high volume, you might be able to do well.
Right. So
Also,
the procedures, team, supporting team, and the type of training. Yes, Dr. Dekar.
Ma'am, some practical things I would like to add on is, number one, right in the beginning when we are learning, I think it's very important to pick your cases very carefully. Because in today's era, not only the nature of the case is important, but also social health is also important. You don't want to get messed up in a simple case right in the beginning of your career, because that will really slow you down and demoralize you. So as beginners, I think you have to identify what cases you are comfortable with. You have to understand what you are not trained to do, or you have to understand what not to do, especially when you're practicing. I mean, Jay is in Mumbai, I am in Northeast. So we have a total different patient background. We have to understand that. And we also have to understand what the patients want to accept as a treatment. So I think these are very important points.
That's nature of the procedure. Right. Binal, anything else you want to ask?
Actually, yeah, that was also my point, that the choice of cases in the beginning of the learning curve is very important, what Dr. Dekar just covered, because if you take up cases which you are able to finish well, it boosts your confidence. So, you know, the big masses or difficult sites or previous surgeries or redo cases are to be taken up later. But then at the same time, a shadow of a senior, not by age, but by experience. Like somebody who is better with, if that person is along with you in the OT, or at least at the phone call, he or she is available, you know, that is also a thing which, you know, slowly helps you to take up more and more difficult cases. And as also already mentioned, the audit is a very important thing. You know, it allows the retrospect, introspect, and, you know, slowly we can, and auditing by somebody who is our teacher, the unedited videos. You know, if they can comment on
I have a question. Dr. Sujata, Parul, you're back.
Hello.
Parul?
Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible now. What I will do is, I will unshare and I want you to share, because there are some videos from this thing which we want to run. Okay. And we are in this slide, Parul, which is factors affecting learning curve. Parul, I think he is a weak one. Anyway, one question I want to ask. There are always people saying that we are in corporates, we are in a smaller setup, so that makes a difference in the learning curve. So I want you to say, does the surgeon's age, size of the cases, Lord, or the hospital setting make any difference in learning curve?
Yes, ma'am, I think it does. Because first things, when you're in a smaller setup,
in learning curve, it makes a difference?
Yes, ma'am, because the technology differs.
Okay.
Technology differs. I mean, somebody might be using a 1000 HD probe for every patient, but we are using laparoscopic shearer, and we have to be very selective on where we use harmonic. Jay is very comfortable with shearer. We are comfortable with harmonic. So I think where we practice and the setup also makes a difference, because also depending on what kind of backup you have, ma'am. Tomorrow, if you have a urologist friend who is sitting right in your hospital, you won't be scared to do the ureteric tunnel dissection in the beginning. So I think it really, you really need to have a heart of a lion when you're operating in a place where you don't have backup, because, you know, you never know when endometriosis pops up. I mean, you stand perfectly normal, you put in a trocar and wow, endometriosis. So it might be scary for some surgeons. So I think where you work definitely makes a difference to your learning curve.
It is the
Manjula, can you unshare your screen?
Yes, I am going to unshare.
Please do that.
Yeah. Where is that? Yep, I have unshared my
screen. Thank you.
Go ahead, Parul. Yeah, come down. We are in some 7th or 8th slide. No, go back. Yes, this is it.
Parul sir, please mute one of the devices that you are logged in from, because both the devices are speakers is on.
Okay. Just a moment.
Turn off the volume of your laptop.
He has entered. You should have that aura of anything coming from back. Shah Rukh Khan has come.
An echo.
We need full screen, Dr. Parul.
Yes, just a moment.
Yes, now we can hear you very clearly.
Sorry for all this. I don't really know why it happened. Okay, this is where we are.
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah, let me finish this. So here, there is one more interesting fact I wanted to ask. Always it is the interest of in this slide, leave it. I'm interested in two things. One is the resident's lack of laparoscopic skills. and supervisors' lack of laparoscopic skills, which is still we are in where we are in our today's time. So a PG, postgraduate learning from a medical college, 3 years of MBBS or plus MD, you have a supervisor who does not have laparoscopy and you're supposed to learn from them. So don't you think that is going to have an effect on the learning curve?
Definitely yes.
Definitely, ma'am.
Yeah. So
Big
I think big time. So I think the residents in interest and in the supervisors lack also. So Parul, we'll go ahead to the next and you start off.
Okay, go ahead.
So the next question, I think Pandit, I just saw you, Dr. Kishore. You're there?
Yeah.
Yes, I saw that. So limitations, when we are talking about learning curve in MIS, we always talk about the differences between the open surgery versus MIS. So what are the limitations and how do you think we can overcome it?
Doctor, please start your video, Dr. Kishore Pandit.
Yeah, actually, I cannot start my video. I don't know why. It is saying that some app is using that video, but I have restarted, I have logged out and again logged in.
Your voice is good enough, so please
No,
go ahead and
just narrate the points. Otherwise, I'll have to stop sharing and you will have to restart sharing and all those things will happen.
Okay.
Yeah. So what are basic limitations between an endoscopy and open surgery, if you can highlight?
Yeah, actually it depends on the learning curve where we started. If learning curve is very short, or people try to think that I have taken a training for 6 weeks, 4 weeks, and then I can start endoscopy, and then there is a limitation.
The question is the differences between the thing where they have to overcome it. The question is the limitations or the differences between the open and the lab, where the whole learning curve issue is coming.
Actually, anatomy everybody is well aware of in open surgery. In laparoscopic surgery, you have to learn the anatomy. You have to get to know the laparoscopic view of anatomy. And you have to keep on doing it. Secondly, limitation happens when there is no hand and eye coordination. So you have to keep on doing it, and that's where the limitation happens. Okay. Secondly, you should know your own limitations of doing laparoscopic surgery. See, in open surgery, you might be good doing a lot of major cases, big uterus, big myoma, but sometimes the same person cannot do it laparoscopically, so you should know your limitations.
No, we want why. Why? What is the difference?
Where do you think are the limitations?
See, I have already listed here. If you can highlight those points.
Dr. Beenal raised her hand. Please go ahead.
So basically, very rightly said that the hand-eye coordination is a challenge. Besides that, the depth perception, because when we are used to doing the open surgeries, you already have a 3D vision. You have to get used to the 2D. Although now we have advantage of having 3D, but then this is how you progress. Then very important thing is, as I told, that it is technologically driven. So you need to understand your instruments, their movement, and counterintuitive movements of the instruments. Plus, a major task or a challenge for the beginning is the suturing and the endo suturing and knotting, because there you need coordination of both the hands and the instruments. Tissue retrieval is also a challenge, because we may be able to separate the big fibroid, but then again to remove it is a challenge. One more important thing is the ergonomy. Like you have to have proper ergonomics, otherwise you will damage your own self. Here, one more important point I would like to highlight is that the major difference between minimally invasive and open surgery is that in open surgery, majority of the charge is with the surgeon himself or herself. Here, you are very much dependent on the camera person, the assistant, because camera person is your eye. He should know that what you want to see, or you see what he shows you. So it is very important that there is an understanding between the camera person and the assistant. So it's an entire team approach. Like here, you can do a good job when the team is good. In open surgery, major thing is with the help of, in hands of only the surgeon. So I think that's a major difference.
Perfect. Means not only your training matters, but the assistant's training also matters.
Yes,
so
yes.
I also feel, ma'am, that we there was a misnomer. I think this is a complete misnomer that we were taught earlier, is that you have to first master open surgeries and then you switch on to laparoscopy. So now I think all of us have realized, no, that is not the fact, because the principles are actually different. Because when we're doing an open surgery, we're approaching everything anteriorly, whereas laparoscopically we're approaching everything posteriorly. So that is a complete misnomer, because the entire technology is different. And I totally,
you know, sorry Dekha to interrupt, but you are very right. I feel the people who started doing laparoscopy first, the younger generation, you know, they are better off than us. When, like, for myself, we were doing open surgeries for 10-15 years, and then suddenly we had to learn laparoscopy. So that is the difference which I have noticed. And ma'am, the last point in that list was anesthesia, which is also a very important point. Like, your anesthetist has to be very confident in giving a proper head look, because otherwise he'll make your life difficult. You know, if he or she doesn't give a proper head low, he doesn't allow you to have a pneumo, and if he keeps the blood pressure very high, you know, it will make your task all the more difficult. So the anesthetist should also be confident of giving a proper anesthesia for laparoscopy, which is different from the open surgery.
So you come up with your own techniques, how to be friendly with anesthetists. That is first thing. Never fight with anesthetists in the OR. You can fight with your husband or wife at home, but never with anesthetists at OR. Second, you can put a pillow under the buttock so that you get an extra this thing. And
Madam, can I add something? Sorry,
yes,
but
Jay, absolutely.
Madam, in today's world, laparoscopy is something which is on demand.
Right.
Okay. So I mean, of course, one can say that one started with laparoscopy and one started with laparotomy, but you know, ultimately it is something like laparotomy. I'm not comparing laparotomy to a Nokia phone, but I want to say that laparoscopy is the iPhone, you know, and people really demand it. So there is no way in which we can escape it, you know.
No, that is the reason, as a postgraduate, when you are learning an open, and if you want to go on into laparoscopy, what are the limitations on which you should work on? See, proprioception is something I really want all of you to understand. When you are touching the tissues in open versus knowing the proprioception through the instrument, you have to develop the art of knowing the sensation of the tissue through the instrument. So all these are the limitations which you have to work on. That's where the learning curve comes, and that from this slide, we get how to improve and make the learning curve short. Do you all agree or not?
Totally.
So these are the points on which we need to work so that you decrease the learning curve of a person who wants to learn laparoscopy, right?
Another point I would like to add, ma'am, which nobody mentions, is we are right-handed surgeons.
Right.
We never focus on developing our left hand. We have, actually, it's the left hand that shows you, the traction, but nowhere in our training. And a funny thing, if we ask ourselves, when we started assisting laparoscopy, if you all remember, we all used to still assist with the right and turn our head like that. Whereas if you start with the left hand, I think if you start developing your left hand, that's when your surgeries become faster, your tissue grasping becomes faster. And in today's era, everybody just wants to start putting in a trocar and wants to start operating. But
that is the point of fixed angle of surgery. When we said fixed angle of surgery, we are all putting it like this and operating. So we need to work on it and then see that we become ambidextrous and everything. Right, Dekha? Very nicely put. I think we can go to next slide of conquering Dr. Parul. Parul?
The Parul's voice is gone again.
Next slide, please. Parul? Yes. So how do you, now that we know these are things we have to conquer, so what is a strategic way of conquering the learning curve? Next slide, Parul. So these are the points most of you, Jay, Dekha, Beenal, and even Dr. Sujata has spoken about before. Can we have an organized way of how to go about with it? Anyone? Okay, Beenal?
Yeah, so basically, definitely it has to start with a proper learning. Like, you cannot just, attend a workshop and then directly feel that you can start doing laparoscopy. So it has to be a proper training program in which they go stepwise, how to do the access, understanding of the instrument, and step-by-step the steps of a procedure. So it has to be a proper learning course. And just as pointed by one of the panelists, like not a very limited 4 days or 7 days, it has to be an elaborate learning course, and probably you can again revisit the training center again once you have acquired certain level. So it is not a one-time task. Then very rightly said that you take up very simple cases in the beginning. Like for me personally, I used to, post patients for vaginal hysterectomy, and with patients' consent, like we used to tell them that after Durbin, like in Gujarati, we used to explain them that we'll have a look by laparoscopy and then proceed that way. So just, putting in a trocar or, just having a confidence in having a laparoscopic access, tying a knot on the round ligament and then finishing the surgery by vaginal. So this is how gradually I developed the learning. So gradually, step by step, then again, we have already discussed that we should audit our own case. We can do it on our own, or we can ask our teacher to, review our cases. So this is how we can gradually progress.
Parul, next slide, please. Parul, next slide.
Yeah.
We'll leave it here for a minute and then we'll continue. Yes, Dekha, anything else you want to?
Yeah, so careful patient selection, again, repetition. The workload is very important when you do the same case repeatedly. For example, driving a car. Like initially, we have to be very careful, that we put in the gear or we see the rear view or whatever. But once you have been doing it for many years, then probably automatically the brain circuit is so channelized that you don't have to actually put in. So certain things become, as a routine. So the workload definitely, trains your hand and eye coordination, the proprioception so well that your learning curve reduces. So workload has to be increased. Yes. So probably you can join a place like some, government center or some. So in spite of, suppose you are in a private practice, but then the workload is initially less. So try to join a center where there is more workload, because more the number of cases you see, you assist, gradually your learning curve will reduce. So the workload is very important.
Jay, you touched on many points in this. You spoke about the audit, you spoke about keeping a database, and all of you spoke about regionalize the experience and video and review each case, right?
Yeah.
Very important is operate with somebody who is interested in collaboration. That is a point which is something which, can it be a teamwork and can it go forward till the learning curves come down?
Actually, madam, even if the
No, I thought that Vivek is also online. He's very experienced trainer, so we can have his inputs also.
Yeah, sure.
Vivek hasn't come. He's come online?
Yes. He messaged me that he is now online.
Okay.
Vivek, are you there? Okay. I also wanted...
Can you hear me?
Yes,
now
please.
We can hear you.
Yeah. Okay, fine. So... But I was having your pictures. You didn't get my picture. I think I was.
Vivek.
Now you are there.
I kept it behind. Okay, I kept my hand raised up, but I thought that nothing, so I sent a message to Parul. Okay. So it's been a pleasure to be here again, and I was just listening what you were going through. Just let me share some points on all these slides which you just showed. Now, initially, what I would say is that one. Don't underestimate your own self. You are your biggest limitation. There is nothing else as it. So if you're in a small town, big town, does not matter. Especially in today's, internet world, you have access to all the technology you want to. But finally, when you start, it comes down to your own self. You need to start from no matter how much you may assist, whatever you may learn. But when you start on your own, the things are always very different. And what you start with, the initial thing is you need to be cautious on the patient which you select, that already which you had mentioned. But like if you do not have access to that kind of patient and you're starting in a new practice and all, you're joining a certain hospital where you start with simple tubal ligations, and you just start putting a suture there. You start, before virtually cauterizing them or something, just start with small procedures on that. And especially when we started doing our hysterectomy, at that time, it was always LAVH. LAVH is lap-assisted vaginal hysterectomy. So you start doing laparoscopy and you are confident that you can do it vaginally. So patient is able to benefit.
Dr. Vivek, I just want to stop 1 second here. You are all mentors. You're all mentors. All of you are very good. So now, when you want to tell the upcoming laparoscopic surgeons, how do you want them to conquer their learning curve?
That's what I'm saying, that start with smaller procedures. And if you have a tubal ligation to do, then put up a suture there, try to put up a suture, and then rather than just cauterizing and cutting it, you just start putting up a suture there. That will help you. Secondly, when you are doing a hysterectomy, if you are doing a vaginal hysterectomy, try to do as much as is possible laparoscopically, and where you get stuck, you proceed vaginally. And
you're all doing the step 4. You're telling them to do the procedures without even doing anything else. Parul, can we have the next slide?
No, but let me put in a couple of words on this. One was in the previous slide, there were discussion about right-handedness and left-handedness. See, we have made a mistake that we were performing tubal ligation from the left side because our right eye would be seeing through the scope. We were seeing through the scope. Now we can stand on the right side, then your right hand will remain dominant. So there is no issue about making one hand dominant or the other hand. And second point I wanted to make was, some comment was that iPhone, laparoscopy is iPhone, not that. In fact, we have created impression in patient's mind that endoscopy is superior. We have to say that all surgeries have their place in our armamentarium. And anytime we have to have by default switch on to a laparotomy. So never say that laparotomy is not going to be there. There is a place of that. And then we highlight the strength of endoscopy, and in selected cases, endoscopy has a superiority and we follow it. But at the same time, don't denigrate the open surgery or laparoscopy.
Yes. Parul, I think here the point which is very important is we have to go through proper mentorship and the case selection and then go. So this is what I'm interested in learning. How do you build a curriculum for the present generation to come up? First, they should know, means knowledge about what it is, anatomy and everything. Second, they should know how, in the sense you do small thing, multiple choice tests, and then I have to do. Third, they show how, in the sense they get simulated. Finally, they do. So we are all talking about direct 4th step. That is, how do they do? So what I'm trying to tell you in the present generation is we have to go in a stepward thing. There is a 4th step. Can we go to the next slide, please?
Ma'am, I totally agree to you on that one.
Yeah. Tell me this slide, Dekha. Go through this slide, which says first is the basic knowledge, means theory sessions, everything, and little small things. Second step should be a theoretical education where everybody writes these exams, get these certification courses, whatever. But a third step should be a structured training on the simulator where you get the feedback, or even under mentorship. Fourth should be where they should be performing under the supervision. Don't you think so, Dr. Vivek? This is the point I was trying to get it out from you, actually.
Yeah. See, the thing is, before, as she said, Bilal said, before you drive a car, you need to see on what it is standing. You need to see the 4 wheels. You need to have a look at the engine oil, how you fill it. And you need to identify the clutch, gear, and the accelerator. So you just don't put a foot on your accelerator and then rush off. You need to know these things well before you come down and you start the thing. So basic instrumentation, and let me tell you, and the equipment setting, connecting your insufflator, connecting your light source, and how it functions, it functions, and the light source is insufflator, they all generate heat, and they're a very small compartment, they will overheat and have problems. So smaller things, and even connecting your audiovisual system, the camera, the recordings equipment, all, it's not easy. You need to standardize it. Nowadays, it's become much more simpler, but you need to know how this is. Then patient positioning vis-a-vis your equipment and your monitor level. Like whenever you're operating, you need a monitor which should be at the level of your eyes. Otherwise, your neck is going to have a lot of strain. When you are standing by the side of the patient on the table, OT table, if you are standing on the left-hand side, like initially they always, teachers, they said that you stand on the left side of the table when you're doing the OT, the laparoscopy. We started with left side being ambidextrous. Now what happened was, when you are standing on your left side, your left arm is close to your torso. So when the arm is close to your torso, the fine movements can happen with your left arm. While your right arm, if you are going contralateral, it is going to, the deltoid is going to get stretched up and you are going to get away. The more your hand is away from your torso, the vibrations will be more. The fine movements will not be executed well. So you need to keep that, strategy in mind. And that is why whichever way you are better, you can always move. And we were taught to be ambidextrous in laparoscopy. Now what happens over a period of time, one of your hand develops a much better function. Like we were starting on the left side of the patient. Now I do more suturing with my left hand. I am more comfortable doing suturing with my left hand while I am a right-handed person. And with my right hand, I am not that comfortable now, because over a period of experience, it is
your learning curve was towards your left hand.
Yes. And then don't also think, that suturing is difficult, that you will not be able to do it. It's just a mind. You see 10-year-old kids playing video games, 10-year-old kids, moving their fingers on the mobile phone. How does that happen? Because they were focused on it, they liked doing it, and they, it is a matter of passion, and perseverance. So these are important. And
most important is the patience. Patients have to come to us for us to add.
Yes, ma'am. I would just like to add from my personal experience of how I conquered my curve was when I first went for training about 6 years ago. I spent 2 hours every day on the endosuturing. 2 hours every day, morning and evening. I think that really made a difference, not just your suturing, but your hand-eye coordination. We used to have gloves and used to cut it. We used to have a toothpick. You pick up the polo, that main chocolate, and you put it over.
Dr. Deka, we have a separate question about how much timing for the training. But regarding structure, how many of you put up a checklist of your training? That number 1, whether he knows the operation theater well. Number 2, whether he can insert the trocars and pneumo well. Number 3, whether he can retrieve and put an endo bag inside, and in how many minutes does he finish the job of taking out the tissue. Number 4, suturing, intracorporeal, extracorporeal. Like this, if we put a structure and put a time limit, then only we will be able to have a very proper training which is measurable. And measurable between institutes, like somebody is trained with me, somebody is trained with Manjula. Both of them should have basic level which is similar. Subsequently, it is okay. A person's skill may lead him to much higher level of skills. So this is what I wanted to put in place, that we all need to create a checklist along with the time, that within this time frame that person should finish this task. And that is something which we need to do. And
I also guess what we also should do is every learner which comes in, I think they should be given equal time on the camera as well as an assistant, as well as vaginal manipulation. Only then you get the proper understanding of how to
extending what Vivek said, I always put my trainees to do a hysteroscopy in my TLH patient. All of them would do a hysteroscopy in TLH cases, and then I would remove the uterus. So they all get the experience of putting in a hysteroscope, taking an endometrial biopsy. Yes.
We have 8 minutes remaining.
Yeah. Manjula. So what is available in training with us? We have a lot of literature, videos. Nowadays, we are better off. We have videos, huge number of videos, even on the internet and YouTube. Pelvic trainers, computer simulation, case observation, lap surgery, surgeon mentoring, and surgical fellowship.
Next slide. We'll talk about pelvic trainers. Just now, Deka has spoke about how important is pelvic trainers and simulators. But simulators right now are still in infancy. So what do you think? Everybody should go through both or one and directly jump to patient? And how do you think you have to go about it? And it has to, in pelvic trainer, you want innate or animal tissues. And a fallacy of pelvic trainer also. Dr. Kishore, I want you to answer this question, please. Dr. Pandit.
Yes.
Yes.
I think pelvic trainer is the basic thing which everyone should have. Virtual simulators, we don't have at a lot of places. Yes. So if it is available, then it's very good. But what I think is, rather than a dry lab, we should have a wet lab. It gives more feel to the trainers.
Inception, right.
Yes. So that is very important. Secondly, looking at our own videos after the surgery, will give you more perception, more correction about the surgery, what went wrong, where I should improve. So these are the very important points.
Yeah. In pelvic trainers, one question I always had a doubt which I'm asking. Do you think you all are comfortable with a fixed camera, or you think the other person should always be there to help with a camera which keeps moving, which gives both of them some help?
No, other person should be there. Fixed camera gives a little bit uncomfortable situation.
Right.
So other person should be there.
Yeah, and there is another fixed idea which people do when they are doing pelvic trainers. Always try, because it's a different, it's not human being. They always do this contralateral switching and all. When in life, most of us start doing ipsilateral. So do you think the training in the pelvic trainer, we should change the models in such a way that we can do a ipsilateral switching?
Absolutely, we should change the model. The Ethicon has a better model.
Yes.
Ethicon trainer has a little bit curved pelvic trainer, right, which will give you access to do ipsilateral suturing. So
yeah,
ipsilateral suturing we should promote more.
Yeah, and then they both are in the same line in pelvic trainers. So don't you think we should come in such a way that we can insert both things? Oh, I think pelvic trainers in the first place should be coming up with little changer things.
One point more I would like to add. Many trainees stand on the end of the trainer in front of the monitor. That is wrong. They should stand on the side, because in real life, they are always on the side. So this is right from the beginning, we have to tell them that stand on the side, not on the front. And secondly, the flat pad which is placed inside, actually you should have a pad which can be put at an angle also, at an incline. So a person has to, in real life situation, operate at different levels. It is not flat inside the abdomen. So now there are pelvic trainers where you can tilt that pad also. So that will also improve the skills.
Okay, next slide. We only have 5. So hysteroscopy, your favorite, Parul, go.
So hysteroscopy, unfortunately, has been given a second status, which is wrong. In fact, gynecologists have the first thing in their hand, which should be hysteroscope. See, laparoscopy may replace a cut to improve the recovery, but hysteroscopy would change the quality of surgery. Like a surgery which has a long-lasting effect, like say septum. Previously, we used to cut open the fundus and resuture it. The entire obstetric career was suffering. Now, daycare. Similarly, corneal cannulation. Previously, corneal implantation used to be there. Submucous fibroid. Cutting open the uterus is totally eliminated. So we all need to focus more, and in all our training, first thing should be hysteroscopy. And it is so easy to learn. Only thing is that angled scope makes things a little bit difficult. Can you, Binal, highlight the hysteroscopy training? How do you do that?
Yeah. Yeah, very important is to understand the assembly of the hysteroscope. So that should be the first thing. Second thing is how to navigate in the scope. You know, I mean, initially we used to use the bigger scope, so dilating and, you know, dilating and not under dilating, at the same time not over dilating, because otherwise you will lose all the hydrotubation, like all the fluid will come out. So, and then once you have a smaller diameter scope, you know, how to negotiate in the scope, you know, because you need to get used to that 30 degrees. So don't try to like keep the channel which you are seeing, you have to keep it at the lower level so you don't hit on the wall. So this is very important, that how you can negotiate in the scope. Then there has to be an understanding of that when the light source is at which angle, so you are seeing which wall. So, you know, you try to, you know, make your brain and your eyes understand that which wall of the uterus you are seeing. And then also very important thing is that in laparoscope, the instruments are separate. Whereas in hysteroscope, the instruments are in the same line. So if you try to, you know, move the instrument from that handle, you may damage the delicate hysteroscope. So the entire assembly has to move together. Like the hysteroscope and the instrument, whatever you're trying to do, everything has to move together, and everything is in your hand here. The camera, the instrument. So it is a totally different thing which we need to train. Plus, try to reduce more in and out. So that will, you know, otherwise you will lose all the fluid and
distension and hemostasis, both will be affected.
Yes.
Yeah, so to address this beautifully, there is some interesting training program. Manjula, can you highlight this?
Yeah, it is nothing but the hysteroscopy training coming up from the Germany. It is about it has a 14 anatomical locations. It will have the isthmus and at the level of isthmus and even in the mid, anterior, posterior, right, left, and then the fundus. So with these 6 models available, it will have a 30-degree hysteroscope by itself. Next slide, please. This is how it looks. So I think simulators and the something you can cut, you can do polypectomy, you can do apart from simulator, just like a pelvic trainer, you have a hands-on this thing. But saying this, I love the idea of Dr. Parul, what he said, like for every hysterectomy patient, if you can make your trainees do a hysteroscope, I think that would go a long way in the decreasing the learning curve.
So question of number of cases doesn't arise. You have plenty of cases, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So that, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So in today's times, okay, do you think the learning curve is much lesser, and why? If yes, why?
We have 4 minutes remaining.
Yeah, 4 minutes. Yeah. So Jay, tell me why do you think it has come down? You said that people are learning, people are doing this. So why do you think the learning curve has come down?
That is because there is too much access to technology and too much access to mistakes or training available, you know. I can learn from somebody else's mistake on YouTube. Somebody can learn from my technique on Facebook Live today. Fortunately, Zoom is there, so we don't have to. I don't have to visit Hyderabad to look at Manjula madam. I can see her as well from this screen and watch her surgeries. I think that has just saved time. You know, if you will not believe this, I'm traveling somewhere and I'm attending this entire session in my car, and you know I'm driving and simultaneously the Zoom is on the car.
But Jay, your face is not seen, so I missed you.
That's why he logged it. He was there for a second before.
I have on my face. I have on my face, but it's you are not going to like my face because I'm concentrating somewhere else. That's why.
Come on, but okay.
Yeah. Right. So I think that has really helped. That has really helped, madam.
So tell us this much, Jay. Learning laparoscopy, how many months or cases required till you can certify that this person is trained?
I think it is very individual, sir.
Yes, first thing in general,
very individual. In general, if you ask me, I'll tell you what I was taught. Okay. So when I was a resident, my boss, Dr. Ashwath and Dr. Sarina, they first allowed me to put the central port or the optical port once I had finished assisting 350 cases. So I don't know if it is right or wrong. I don't know if it should be that way, but that was the logbook on which I had to sign, and only then I was allowed to start my surgeries. So I don't know if it can be extrapolated like that.
Yeah, not everybody will have the privilege of working for such a long time. So how do you think?
Yeah. But generally speaking, 100 hours on pelvic trainer with a logbook, that should be minimum, and then one goes on to the patient.
Yeah.
Now on patient, it will be individualized, but Manjula has put up this interesting study.
Yeah, this is a study which they said that if they perform more than 30 cases, definitely the number of intra-op populations will come down. But again, performing LAVH more easily than TLS due to the training, that is normal. So like Dr. Vivek said, go up from laparoscopy, and Deenal also said go up from vaginal, then graduate the research for TLA. But definitely plateau will be reached after 75. So 30 to 75 cases where you keep learning. Now, finally, we're coming to the last two thing of mentoring. I want that mentoring slide, Parul, because I want to know how many people are actually having the time to spend.
Sorry to interrupt. We have 1 minute remaining.
1 minute. Okay, the last slide. Please tell me how many people are actually having the time for mentoring. And do you think mentoring ends there and continues even future when they call and ask you? And do you think there's going to be a competition, so you're worried about mentoring? And what exactly mentoring means? Any one of you, please. Maybe Vivek, you've been a mentor for long. You tell me.
I think it's a good idea. You know, most of the people, the mentors, they have a feeling of insecurity that he may become better than me. I think that is too foolhardy to think like that, because in India, so much of population, you know, and so many patients there, and you just need to proceed on your own. And nobody can take your space, you know, and if you are doing what work you are doing, nobody can replace it. And believe me, if laparoscopy this is the real advantage, that if you are good and you put in that much of effort, then you will become better, and nobody can stop you doing that. So you need not be challenged by somebody or feeling insecure. So in our institute also, we don't have any charges. We allow observership, fellowships, programs with us. You can be there for as much time you want to, because it is not only that they learn, we also learn.
Sorry to interrupt, but time is up.
Time is up. I'm going to end the...
Time is up.
So I just concluding remarks, Manjula, you can make, and then I'll make, and we
concluding remarks. Like Dr. Vivek said, all of us are mentors, but only thing is mentorship will never end there. They can always call us back. After 1 year, 2 years, we should be there for them. People learn from their mistakes, others' mistakes, and never learn. So we want them to learn from our mistakes and then make less mistakes of their own. And thank you all. It has been a pleasure to be moderating this session. Dr. Parul, off to you.
Thank you very much. I am sorry for initial glitches with my system. One thing is certain, youngsters learn endoscopy much faster than seniors who have been used to use their fingers. So they find it difficult to switch. Second thing is, the more computer games you play, you develop the dexterity of your finger and thumbs. So that also helps. So with this, I think we will end up this session. Thank you very much.
We'll just have 1 minute and 1 sentence from each of the panelists, Parul bhai.
Yes, that would be very nice. Very
Binal,
nice.
Yes. Start with Binal. 1 sentence only, Binal.
Binal, your comment.
Yes. Yeah, this was a wonderful experience, because this is something,
Binal, comment, no comment. You want 1 word of suggestion. Tareef nathi karwani.
Sorry, I didn't get the point.
You can criticize, but don't try to
sort of say
good things.
To the audience. 1 message to the audience, very quickly.
Okay. Message to the audience is that believe in yourself.
Okay, Yashodan.
Technology really helps in lessening your curve of learning.
Dr. Pandit.
Dr. Pandit.
Dr. Sujata. Jay.
Atul sir, nice to see you. That's the concluding remark.
The audience.
The message to the audience, Jay.
Yeah, I believe we are in a fast-moving world, and we need to adapt very quickly to these things.
Thank you, Dr. Vivek.
Patience, perseverance, passion, and persistence that will bring the patients and along with the payment and the purse.
Thank you very much. We end the panel.
Add Parul in P. Okay, bye.